Who in this room have used any kind of social media in a LARP?
For a LARP or in a LARP?
In the last week or?
In the game? In a LARP? You decide. Okay, who in here thinks that social media is scary?
Yes.
That's quite a lot. Okay.
I think people are scary.
People are scary.
People use social media.
Okay.
Yeah. So we quickly want to run through a bit of the social media before we're going to get a panel up here. So the reason why you want to use social media is you're going to get an extra layer of communication added to your game. And this level is fairly easy to use and provides a lot of additional information player to player, both in and off game. These kinds of inputs could be moods, it could be information, it could be documentation of the LARP both in and off game again. It could be inner voices, like a meta technique, inner monologue, explaining how your character feels inside to the other characters so they might react on it. And it can be off game. It could be an off game room online. Yeah. So the things you're basically sharing is in game I could write a text saying I am annoyed coming to work today. I could take a photo of the co-worker I love the most and share that with the rest of the co-workers. Or I could take a movie of the weird party we're having at night and then showing everybody the things we're doing. I could also just, as a character, share political blogs and having comments on that, being either right or left-winged, and in that way shaping my character by using already existing content on the internet.
And we'll do a quick walkthrough of some well-known social networks that you can use. So Facebook, we would say that it's super functional for before and after LARP runtime. So before the LARP starts and after the LARP starts, it can be super useful because it is really hard to do fake accounts, as an example, on Facebook. So yeah, so that's why you probably would use it as yourself. What is good about Facebook is that it's very familiar. Most of you are already using Facebook, so it's like you know how it works. It also has a lot of possibilities. You can post all kinds of media within it, like movies and pictures and every kind of links and stuff. And you can create closed or open groups, and it's quite easy. The really bad thing is that if you're using it runtime or even after, it has a very strong connection to self. It's really super easy to trace back to you. And if you would like to try to do a fake account for Facebook or something like that, that's super hard. The last time, which is just a couple of weeks ago, some guys I know tried to do this very carefully for a game thing, and Facebook detected it after 1 week or 2 weeks or something like that. And that was like, yeah, they did a lot of efforts to try to do fake accounts, and Facebook deleted it quite fast. Google Plus, as it was run for Panopticon, we found out that it works very well for runtime during a LARP. Why? Because it's unfamiliar. Many people are not using Google Plus, and because of that, it feels fresh. It feels like new in some sort of way, and you sort of learn it. It's sort of like sewing clothes for a LARP costume, that you sort of get into character using this stuff that you're not used to. It also has a lot of possibilities. It can connect to Google Hangouts, so you can have video chats. Also, this closed groups was used in Panopticon. So we did a sort of company intranet. It's bad that it's not familiar, because it doesn't mean that you don't know how it works, so that takes time. It also has a quite easy connection to self. It's it can hit you back really easily with what you post there, even if you do an account that you don't think will trace back to you. Twitter, very easy. You can have private accounts, and it's really this short and sweet format of posting pictures and text. And as long as you are a bunch of people connected to each other with private accounts, you can keep it private. Or you do it somewhat public, and be out in the public with your fake self and write stuff that anyone else can see. it's kind of tricky to find out how to do it in private setting, and then you might end up doing it publicly without wanting to. Then it's also the ethical question of being in this very open arena that Twitter is, with a fake personality, people believing what you're saying, stuff like that. People do that for ad campaigns all the time, but do you want to do that for your LARP? You decide. Instagram would be LARPing with photos. So Instagram is this mobile mobile app thing that you post pictures and you follow your friends or you follow a hashtag. And if you do that, also you can do that with private accounts. That could work super good for just getting a lot of pictures of what's happening in the LARP right now, and you do that. A big minus, of course, is that it's photos, because photos are very problematic in many ways. And also the semi-public thing, if you do stuff publicly and you do it fake, is it real, is it not, and is this ethical questions?
Yeah. So a different option, instead of using the known social medias, is of course doing your own. So you could do as a closed circuit, computers just connected to each other, not connected to the internet. It gives a lot of possibilities because you can control the type of social network you need. It could just be a texting, it could just be a photo network. It gives a lot of safety because it's not connected to any cloud in any form. But it is time and resources. It takes a lot of time and resources to build anything custom built that you're going to use in computers. Of course, it is offline. So I will probably not be able to use my mobile device if not somebody have put up a really excellent made own social network. So I will not be connected the same way I would in real life. Another possibility is use the power of the pen. Simply go analog with your social network. Put up a wall with the possibility of just putting up statements, tweets, ideas, drawing pictures, whatever you want, and having that as a place in the game where you can go and see other people's voices. This is of course really super safe, and it's really easy to use because you need pen and paper. It is super offline, so I will not be able to connect to my phone, and it is really less realistic. I will not have the same options of communicating in the same way, and it might be harder to find the information you need afterwards.
So you can use this in sort of 3 stages as we see it. You can use it before a LARP, during a LARP, or after a LARP. Before a LARP, it could be some sort of build-up phase. So for the LARP Parn instance, which was about couples therapy, before that LARP, people shared in a closed Facebook group. They shared videos of their characters maybe sending a video message to their lover. And it's like, oh, I'm looking forward to this holiday, la 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 la. And then you shared a lot of, you had lots of control of what you shared, but you could also share some really nice media about, about your character. And this was not, this was done just by player initiative, so it wasn't formalized how people would interpret this. Do our characters see this video or not? But it was just a really nice way, ad hoc, to get more into the characters by video in a Facebook group as a build-up thing for the LARP, before the LARP started. I will go through a few examples of runtime later, what you can do during a LARP. After LARP, it's super common that it's used for debriefing. So one thing was that for Capo, there was an open Facebook group in which people shared their thoughts and feelings super openly, which was really great for a lot of players. But of course, this was also very problematic because someone might share something, you might not feel that people should share this publicly because anyone could see this group. Also, someone might mention something about a player doing something to them, and that gets shared to everyone. So this can be used in many different ways. Yes.
Yeah. So Knutpunkt was a game made by Eric, Partner,
and some other people.
And so other people.
Quite a few others, yeah.
Quite a few other people. And it had a rerun in Denmark in 2013. It's a game about an ad company, advertising company, of course. We used in that game the social media as an in-game form only. There was also a build-up on Facebook, but there was made a network in game that we used. We used the Google Plus because it was easy to come into. They don't delete fake accounts. We used the Gmail to send messages to each other with, of course, the fake names also. And we use Skype also with fake names to contact clients, respectively, stuff like that. An interesting thing about this was that the level of communication we got from this was you could have a presentation, people presenting for a large client, and thinking this presentation went really well, and coming out with their hands raised over their heads like, yes, this went really well. And while doing the presentation happening, I could take a photo of them and saying this is the worst presentation ever. So the rest of the office would know that they have bombed when they came out. So this is a way of adding an extra level of information and telling a lot of people what is happening so they have something to play on. It also added, of course, an extra level of realism that you could actually Skype with people around the globe. So suddenly you talk with somebody in South Africa, suddenly talk with somebody in America, giving you clients, talking with you about what they needed and giving you feedback on the things you already did for them. As an extra note, we actually tried to keep everything in close groups, but because of course there was a camera crew present at Knutpunkt, that whatever we did closed, a camera crew filmed and put online.
Which we knew before, but still, yeah.
But I don't think we thought about it in social media context because that was documentation. And suddenly a Japanese or Chinese website, Hong Kong website, had posted a video of Knutpunkt, which was fairly weird.
90,000 clicks or something?
Yeah, we don't know what Daily Mail has, but whatever. It's another example from misspelled name. Lindängens riksinternat was a game about boarding school, with lots of students bullying each other. They had an off-game Facebook group. They were using their phones a lot because there's a rerun this spring, and someone just told me how much they're SMSing right now with their other players, like in-game SMSing already for the next game. But for that game as well, they're using their phones because, of course, teenagers use their phones. But they could log into Facebook and communicate off-game. Like, I need this, could you help me with that? I'm setting up this fight, whatever. So that's, we don't know so much about this example because we just heard about it. It's really cool.
Are there organizers here?
Not the organizers, probably a bunch of players, but we get to that later. Yes?
We have somebody who has tried it, but we can get back to that. Halmstad used the pen and paper version.
You could tell, yes.
Halmstad was an alternative reality of occupied Finland. And they started out by having a news channel putting up papers with like CNN headlines. And in-game, the players decided they wanted to respond to this. So they began to put up tweets on paper, and this social network developed on itself. As far as I know, this continued during the whole game, and they had a great wall where all this paper just was slowly building up, piling up with new information, sharing between the players and commenting on what happened in the world. So, one thing we need to talk about before we go on is context, because all these things we're talking about now with the sharing and the photos and everything else is context. Us people playing the game, we have a perfect grasp of the context what we're seeing. A friend of mine, knowing I Larp, might have the idea that when he sees a picture of me doing something really weird, it's just me LARPing. A person who might hire me have no clue that me sitting and snorting fake coke is not me snorting coke. And that might be a problem when I go to the interview. So context is everything, and how is whatever we share perceived outside the LARP is the main thing when we're using social media.
Yes. And what about the media in social media? You could do text, super easy. You could post a photo, or you could do videos. That's basically the types of media you would be using. It's sort of a racing scale from text to video in both identifiability and deniability. So the more we show, the more graphically it is. I mean, I would see that this is a friend of mine. I could hear what she's saying as well. It's super easy to identify her, and so if it would be a photo of me from an interrogation scene, that's one thing. But if it's a video of me from an interrogation scene, then people would actually hear. They would be super easy actually to also, even if I'm a bit disguised, they could probably hear it's me and stuff like that. So then it's very easy to both identify me, and it's very hard for me to say, no, that's not me. While if I'm Jon Baba writing this tweet, it's quite easy to say like, no, that's not, I didn't do that, if I need to deny it and so on. So, of course you now sit here, all of you, and say, yeah, this is so awesome and cool. We can do all this stuff. We can share all this media, Rasmus. We can do things like in the real world, where I'm totally on Instagram all the time.
Yeah.
Isn't that the best thing ever?
Well, yes and no, because there is a certain problem here, and that is that the internet never forgets. Whatever we put on there will stay there, and we cannot get away from it. And somebody will dig it up. They will find it with some kind of photo recognition at one point, and it will be at your interviews.
Well, okay then. Let's ask a panel some questions.
Are you Snapchatting content?
Instagramming you.
It's okay to take photos of us from this presentation. So you know.
As long as you're not sharing it.
It's also a bit too important. Are you guys comfortable with the video clip?
This feels very much like an option.
Yeah.
It's okay.
No, it's okay. Yeah, walk down from this side. Okay. I will ad hoc present you, apart from the ones that I already presented. So Erik Fatland has written several larps, one of them Panopticon. So he has both done social media in 2003. Was that first round?
Yes.
Yeah, and social media in 2013 for Panopticon. Interesting. Magna was a player at Panopticon. He's from Norway. He does great games and all kinds of stuff. Johanna was at several slides up here, and she's awesome. Stefan lives in some country in Africa, but he's German.
Johanna is awesome. I live in some country.
And he's also awesome. Ella is a super internet security expert. If you didn't know that, you will find out soon. Okay. So, does the internet ever forget? Anyone is yours? Go wild. And we will happily moderate questions coming from you as well.
I was searching for pictures from Larps from '95, which I knew were online a few years ago. Yesterday, I was searching for them. I didn't find them in the internet Wayback Machine. I didn't find them. So
the internet
seems to forget.
Unreliably. This is sort of the worst of both possible worlds.
Yeah.
The media that you really, really, really wish would fall offline will stay there for decades, and that thing that you desperately wish you could find again will be gone.
I've got something for the internet may newly remember things because one of the problems if you have stuff that's online is that what happens in a LARP could be transgressive. And what is transgressive now might not be the same as what's transgressive in 10 years.
What do you mean with transgressive?
I mean it breaks rules. But within the game context, it's okay to break rules. It's okay for me, in a certain game context, it's okay for me to shout words at people that would be racist or otherwise completely insulting and offensive, but they're needed for the game purposes. Whereas in real life, I wouldn't be able to do that. Well, 10 years down the road, we don't know what's going to be offensive or problematic in our real life, so the internet might even remember in the future.
Yeah, raise your arm if you have a question and we'll pitch you in. And if it's several people raise your arms, we will write it down. Yeah.
Mixed group of players, how do you handle different stances towards social use of social media in a game like that? Someone wants it, someone doesn't want it.
I think that's one of the things that was really problematic at Panopticon last year, because we knew that we were going to play a really trendy ad agency, and we knew that social media is a big part of reality these days. So we knew that we needed social media within the game, but we hadn't agreed upon totally how it was going to be, what we were going to do with these things after the game. I think that's one of the great things at Panopticon were all the really stupid shit we were sharing online. Like there was this awful picture of an eyeball inside a vagina, and it was manipulated into it was passed all around. But stuff like that, that's okay within the game context. And then afterwards, it's like, do we want this? When we Photoshop that onto other pictures and things
onto
like
Rasmus' eyes. We found the picture today.
It's like you haven't agreed upon it beforehand, and it's very difficult to negotiate it afterwards because then the differences make it so you have to take everything down. And I think that's sad because I wanted to share some of the experience from Panopticon. Sharing it is showing these things, but we can't do that because we've agreed not to.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a kind of issue that our community has dealt with many times before. When some policy question is dealt with differently by different players, then when we realize that this is a kind of a attend or not attend issue, then it becomes a matter of putting it up front before you sign up for a law. And then letting players make individual decisions about which policy they support or which level of risk. The problem with Panopticon last year was that it was not known that social media use of law would be this kind of issue, and so this discussion came up after people had signed on the base space in the calendars, which is how we learned, like, okay, this needs to be up front.
Yeah, so if you're thinking about it, think about it and then decide and then open for sign up. Yeah. Ella?
I mean, I was mostly going to say what I said. I guess I will expand on that a little bit and say that be very careful with creating accounts that you think aren't linked. You know, if for instance you use a Google phone, and, you use an Android phone, and you create a new Google account, those accounts are actually linked. It may not be obvious that they're linked, but Google can certainly tell they're being used from the same device, and it's probably the same person. And you don't know when that information may suddenly end up being much more public than you thought. Just the fact that you're accessing different Facebook accounts from the same IP address links them. That you're taking photos on the same camera links them, potentially. Trying to preserve unlinkability of identities is, I mean, if you really want to do it, is an incredibly complicated thing to do.
Cecilia?
It seems like we have talked about debriefing a lot on social media, and for social media we use different kind of different forms. I use forum for several my Larp or Facebook specific. Do you see a difference between that we use it for debriefing or in-game context? Because it feels like the questions that started being rising up last year about social media because we're using it now for in-game.
Yeah, I think the difference between in-game and conversations is that usually when we do in-game conversations over social media and larps, it's because we're faking contemporary reality. So everything we do there will appear without all the context says this is fake, we're talking about a game. It's fiction presented as reality.
But the funny thing, I had a former employer who found form text for me when I was debriefing from a Larp from 2009 on a forum. He was asking me, why did you do this? Because he just find the lines when he Googled me. So like it has been an issue longer than we actually realize.
I'm
not saying it's not an issue, I'm saying it's a difference.
We touched that earlier in the discussion. Anyone wants to? Joanna?
Well, in the no, that's something.
No. Okay, yeah, go.
There's something also. There's not just using social media in game or during runtime for the purposes of the game, but I've been finding in the games that I've been playing more recently that there are lots of people that will, before they go to bed at night, I'm at Panopticon, oh my god, this person just did the most fucked up thing to me, tweet, and that's during runtime. So you also get, social media has also the off-game power to expand the circle of where the LARP is happening and what information goes out of it. So it's not just that we use it in-game, but it's also off-game in runtime, and that can be also quite difficult.
think the point about employers is useful. One of the things that's, I don't know how public it is, there are services that employers can use for doing interviews, which will go out and attempt to identify and link together like social media accounts under fake names, that photo recognition, face recognition is already starting to get used. This is going to increase aggressively. It is going to get harder and harder to have any kind of distinction between different identities and different accounts. And the stuff is actively being used to pre-screen employees for interviews. Chances are you may never even hear, you just won't get a call back. You know, that they found, oh, we found something that looks sketchy, let's just not even interview that person. It's too risky. So this can have real consequences that you won't necessarily hear about.
Did you have your questions too?
Yeah, I had a question about how does social media affect and can it destroy a game? How should you mix so it doesn't, everything is about social media and you lose kind of the off game or live gaming part of the game. So is that the challenge, and how do you have any problems with that?
Another thing from Panopticon was, of course, we were doing a lot of work at computers, so we always had the social media in front of us. And sometimes you had like these moments where everything was silent, no one was saying anything, they were just working at the computer, and then suddenly someone starts laughing, and then you go onto the Google Plus, and then you see something has been shared, and then it starts spreading. So I thought that was a very interesting way to get the game going. But one thing that was problematic for me at least was I didn't have a smartphone back in 2013. So part of the game was
back in the days. Those were the days.
I actively avoided the smartphone thing because I knew I would become addicted. I got one in January, and it's taking all my time. So it was a wise decision, but it made it more difficult to interact in Panopticon because I had to have my computer to take part in that game.
With Hussar, actually, with the pen and paper thing, it was also very public. So you actually had to go to the wall, so you would be reading it at the same time somebody else would be reading it, and you would talk about it. So that was probably a much more social solution.
And I think in Panopticon it really added that level that was talked about before, because you had more interaction because of that, not less.
Okay. Emma?
I wonder how you feel about moderating things. Like if you, for instance, would use a blog or something, you could have beforehand moderation or afterwards, and using, like, maybe in some larps we have a person in charge of water or food, to have a social media manager during the game that manages the social media. Would that be an option? Would that be a good trade-off? I mean, it gets less quick, but to have a game master.
Could you explain the scenario? How do you mean that this could work?
Well, very much like if you have a newspaper and they have a commentary field. Some newspaper have an open field where you can just chat on, and some newspapers would have a closed commentary that needs to be vetted before anyone else can see it. So could this be a new game master function? And would that work?
You mean sort of like if what was being posted would be otherwise public? Because in a way,
no, even just going on a blog, because you don't know what's going to be done public.
Right. I'm also not sure like what needs to be posted publicly during a game, because everybody who's playing the game is at the game. So is there I don't know if I understand that question.
I think that it's a tool that can be used, and I think when you design games, you need to be conscious about how you use the tools. I think if you just say, okay, we're going to have social media in the game, and you don't think about how it's going to work, that's poor design, and it might break your game. And if you're making conscious decisions and you know what you want to achieve with it, I'm sure you can do that. And it can be a solution and a way to control the game for the game masters. But it needs to be a tool that serves a purpose.
Okay, and we're putting in some more. Marie, you have still Peter?
Yeah. I was at the Lindängens this year, and I thought that was a really interesting way of using social media. Just, and it happened by accident, as far as I know. But the off-game Facebook group became used as a virtual off-game. People were off-game on Facebook while they were playing. Actually people sitting in scenes while being off-game on Facebook, which I found to be really interesting because it actually didn't break the game. But also people coordinating within the game and with SMS players playing family and friends and stuff from outside the game on the Facebook group. So I found that a really interesting tool and as a positive way of using an open Facebook group for some sort of runtime game master, co-created runtime game master. Of course, it's also put a hell of a lot of in-game content available for everyone, but I would say, for me at least, the benefits of doing this was way larger than the losses.
Okay. Yeah. Can and then next question.
That is actually probably one of the reasons why I still get emails from my fake Panopticon character nowadays, because I used I did some emails during the game. Some job email came in and I answered to it, and I probably used my fake account for that. I'm still not sure, and I still get emails from my landlady in Tanzania to my fake account, and now this week I got spam mail from my fake account, which is quite annoying. It doesn't go away, and it's deleted for months now.
Johannes.
This ties in slightly to the moderation bit, because at Halmstad, I was a player there, and the social media world became extremely important for my character and how I played it. But it was not a design thing; it was something that the players hacked, because the first stuff that went up on the wall, it was not clearly communicated if it was within the fiction or not. If it was actually a printed piece of newspaper put on the wall, or if it was like an internet screen or whatever. And it was also the organizers putting them up first. And then players started spontaneously putting up social media things and like silently, collectively deciding that this is a meta thing. This is a window into to a fake internet.
Was that communicated during the game?
No.
No?
It was just someone put a sign over it after a while saying social media or internet or whatever it said.
Okay, so it was semi-communicated during the game. Yeah.
So it was never, at least as far as I knew, formally decided. It was informally decided. So it was not a design decision by anyone. It grew into this, and we used it. Like as I said, it became important for my character, and I think for some others too. And this was not a design decision. It was not moderated, and it started as something completely different. And like there are, how do you work around the risks or possibilities of players creating these stuff? It's like the Lindängens stuff. It's also not designed by game designers, but happening during the game, and it could change the dynamic completely. Like do you think are the pitfalls and possibilities of this?
We can come back to
One would be like, it'll tie in, but like, is there anybody in the room who's not on Facebook? Okay, but that means that like when you do use a social, you do use an online tool, either for the debriefing, which often happens, or during the game, you can disenfranchise somebody who is not connected to that social network, or doesn't have the right kind of, doesn't have a smartphone, or whatever. And also you start to build into the game a skill, because using social media is a skill, and you can also it can be problematic that some people are better at using it than others, which means that they get an in-game advantage. But having analog points away from that a little bit.
Yeah, I think we'll come back to pitfalls probably. Yeah. Anders?
I think the online stuff that is created, social media stuff that is created during a game, is the art piece itself. I have a wonderful pitch from Peter's character, Panoptical. I was a customer there, and I have gone back and looked at it. I have a wonderful experience of re-experiencing a spirit of the game. And it's art piece itself from the game, and if you have a stream like the debrief from Kappa, I go back there sometimes and just scroll down on start reading to rethink some aspects from that game as well, from organizing it. And of course you should agree on before the game what is the content used for. Like when we were trying to stream from Kappa, we tell only for the players, we will try to stream you while you're playing. And people can go in and see how you're playing in the camp. They can also come in as spectators, looking down at you when you're playing. And we have told you that. And I see it as an art piece itself that others can look into our game. And of course there is this problem that people will maybe not understand it's a game. And then we get some interesting discussion. But I think, of course we can be afraid. I think it's art itself.
Yes, I don't have any.
I was interested by your suggestion of a custom-built social network which could be sort of kept secure within the game. And has that actually been done? And if so, can that technology be shared within the community so that other games can use the same software? Or is that just an idea which needs to be realized?
I would say yes, it has been done. I don't know how many have done internal systems, but I know that it happens once in a while. And I will turn to Erik.
Well, the 2003 Nordic Corp. I mean, it was 2003, so we had our own forum system set up on a local server that wasn't really connected to the rest of the internet. And also ran our local email. So there, I mean, once you go back a little bit in technological generations, there's lots of stuff. But of course, what we really need is something that looks like Facebook, functions like Facebook, but isn't Facebook, and ideally could be shut off as much as possible from the rest of the internet. And we need that also because we can't actually use Facebook for trading cards anymore.
I would say I was in Monitor Celestra, sometimes standing by like this comms logs chat thing, which was like really, it was like a text, it was like an email thing, but it looked like a chat, but it looks like, on a spaceship chat, whatever. I mean, that's really super duper simple technology. If I could program, I could do that, but I can't. And I mean, that's sort of just communicating with text, writing like, you need to move, unless you move now, you will be hit by this big ice dump that our spaceship is letting out now. And I'm like, what shit? I was like, wait, that. It was like super action with getting like this text road that the organizers wrote. So, and that could have been with, you could do that with other ships and whatever, but I mean, there's just simple things with text. I think that it's not that hard to build. And hopefully when people do that, they will share it. That would be great.
I do think that you can do private pods with Diaspora, which is a social network, an open source social network, and I think you can completely close that up, whatever that means nowadays, but in theory it should be a closed system. If you're able to set up your own server, which somebody in your organizer could probably be able to do if you're using technology nowadays.
There are a few tools like that. I don't know of anything that has good smartphone clients though, so if you want the kind of seamless whatever experience, it's going to be a bit clunkier.
I have written a bunch of names. I will not take new names because we'll try to get stuff. So yeah, so you might be on this list. Just don't raise your arm again. Thanks. Siri.
No, I was also at Lindängen, and I wanted to mention another thing that was working very well with the text message system they set up there, and that was something that the participants came with before the game and said, could we do this? And the organizer said, I guess so. I was in the kitchen stuff, so I didn't have a lot of gameplay going on the site. I was mostly just chopping vegetables, and in between in my breaks I could read the text messages coming in to me
from players outside of the game who also played with other players who had real parts, which meant that I got information in-game about what was going on in the school around me. And since I was kitchen staff, I was also a shadow player. So later I could take the information I gained in-game on the text message play that I had in the kitchen and use that when I was shadowing the pupils of the school. So it became 3 layers of different ways of getting information out to the rest of the game, which I think was pretty good.
I had a question over here.
Yes, I have sort of a how-to question, which hopefully the panel or somebody in the audience may answer. I'm co-hosting a post-apocalyptic LARP for about 100 compliments. Is that right? And we are using walkie-talkies and a lot of, it's a big area. The problem is that this LARP is tomorrow in Norway, and I am in Sweden. So the best solution I come up with so far is, because I want to get in on the walkie-talkie, to use Skype and connect that, have somebody connect it for me in Norway with a voice-activated walkie-talkie to try to distribute my voice to the others. I wonder, is there any more fail-safe way to do this?
Okay, we won't have time to answer that question, I'm sorry. But if you have feedback or help with that, please, what's your name?
Anders.
Anders, please go to Anders after this, because we will try to wrap up. Yeah, there's someone said there's okay, we will have, this is the last question. Sorry if you haven't Boris in the back.
I actually wanted to come back to Steve's comment on Twitter. Now I have 2 comments to Steve's. First thing about Twitter, we had a game 2009 where we also used fake accounts in Google and Twitter to play in a corporation LARP, do a film thing. And I created a very detailed Google profile. A half year after the game, I forgot the profile with a Twitter account. Somebody contacted me over Twitter for a job offer. A real job offer. This happened 2 times. And the second time I responded, this is a live role-playing game, it's a fake account, it's going to be quite soon. I don't care. I like the Google profile and I think it would fit. Okay.
That's the other side.
Okay, it was like, like 2 months to really become a cameraman. Yeah, I rejected. The second thing is for Diaspora. Diaspora was that social network, the actual goal was to have a decentralized login so that you can actually have control over your login data and over all the data you create, not being central like Facebook or something. And it just made a big jump because you got a mobile app for mobile phones. So it gets more usable now. That's a good tool to use in the future if you want to do something.
Cool.
Like that.
Do you have anything that tops that he got a real job offer? So you could say, anyone of you want to say it really short now? It could be
I ended up in the Daily Mail.
Yeah. But that wasn't social media. That was Klaus paying for film crews.
That's true.
Film crews. Yeah. Huh? Okay. Yeah.
I don't have anything to top it, but whenever I turn on my computer, I have to decide if I want to use my private account or my Panopticon corporate account. Because it's still there, just like Anders. I go back to it
time
sometimes.
to delete it, Magna. Time to let go.
I got a security job when a guy saw me in my Celestial uniform. I think it also means that everything's always next to me. But still, he asked me about the uniform first.
Okay. So you can get a job. That's great. Okay, I will wrap this up with saying. No, you will say it.
I'll say this. So I want to say one thing before we go. There is a thing that I noticed while we talk about this is social media, because it's so much part of our everyday life and the culture we live in, has a tendency to try to creep in when we do games where the social media should be present, like Hadi has said, where suddenly people writing tweet handles on pieces of paper to somehow make a fake Twitter on a wall. And I think you said when we were just talking at the table before that it's the same if you try nowadays to write a crime novel and not taking mobile phones or social networks into account, you're somehow cheating like hell. And not saying that we should use social media, but social media has become a general part of our communication So we definitely have to think it and think it into the LARP context when we're designing LARPs, because it is a part of the way we are talking and communicating with each other. So basically, also what you should take with you here from is also what is the context of what we're sharing and what we're doing, and what type of media am I sharing, and what am I what am I texting, photoing, and what is the deniability of what I'm doing.
Yeah. And
yes.
and if it's something that it could be a bit sticky, where do you not want this to show up afterwards? And just think about that. Think about that for as organizers when you're designing. Think about this as player when you're signing up. So, I'm just going to raise your hand again if you think you have learned something new. Fuck yeah, that makes me, I have, definitely, okay. Do you think social media is scary? I think it's about the same. I don't know. That's more people in the back. Okay. I'm very sad that we had more questions that could be answered. I also would like you to have even more time. So if you want to keep this going, we have the social media Larps mini golf. At 6 o'clock, Rasmus has figured out that it's like dirt cheap to rent mini golf. It's like 30 kroner for a family. So for 2 families, we'll see. But whatever. See you at 6.